1, 2, 3. Be on your way, gentlemen.
Something that I'm giving up. It's something I have to give up.
Hi, I'm Eloise Daniels.
And I'm Rory Johnston. Welcome to our special presentation, The Year in Video.
As the anchors here at Channel 2, we've had front row seats for some of the biggest news stories of the year. Elections, fires, crime, the transatlantic balloon race, stories that touched us all in one way or another.
Indeed, 1992 was a year of many big stories. In fact, more stories than we could possibly fit in this program. But we had little difficulty choosing our top story. What makes Maine so special is the sense of community and caring. People rally behind their neighbors or an event and call it their own. Certainly, that was the case in August of 1992 when 5 international balloon teams came to Bangor to begin a history-making voyage across the Atlantic to Europe. News Center's Janet Smith takes a look back.
We welcome them with open arms as they touch down in Bangor. The Belgian team, Bertrand Piccard and Wim Verstraeten. The Germans, Joachim Maas and Eric Croft. The team from Great Britain, Don Cameron and Rob Bailey. The Dutch team, Gerhard Hoogslag and Evert Laumann. And the Americans, Richard Abruzzo and Troy Bradley. Race organizers built in a month-long weather window but felt fairly confident optimal conditions would be at hand sooner than later. Up in that way. Balloon crews spent a month waiting for the right weather. While they waited, they familiarized themselves with their equipment. Some crews made sure their camera equipment was in working order, while others made sure they knew exactly how much everything weighed, just in case it had to be tossed out.
Well, our weight is critical on this because nearing the flight, when it comes down to where we might not have any more propane or sand ballast or things, other items could be thrown out of the gondola.
Then finally, on September 16th, the race was a go. The gondolas were trucked to Bass Park, and the balloons were inflated.
We met a lot of friends. I hope you think about us when we are over the ocean. Please, we need that.
As each balloon team ascended into the dark and haunting sky, no one knew who would be victorious. Only Mother Nature held that answer. The first casualty of the race was the German balloon team, forced down by bad weather into the icy Atlantic. Then the Dutch ditched, less than 100 miles from Europe. Both Evert Laumann and Gerhard Hoogslag had to be plucked from the sea. The ultimate victors, the Belgians. They crossed the first paved road in Europe and landed in Portugal. The Brits came in second, and the Americans pressed on and broke the world endurance record, 146 hours in the air. Bradley and Abruzzo finally landed in the deserts of Morocco.
We're very excited to be here.
By all accounts, the first transatlantic balloon race was a success. All 5 balloon teams live to tell about it, and many are eager to come back here to Bangor to race again. Whether that will happen is still up in the air. For the Year in Video, I'm Janet Smith, News Center.
Remember, immediately following this program, News Center will present its balloon launch wrap-up show.
Ralph Waldo Emerson once wrote a poem about the shot heard round the world, referring to the beginning of the Revolutionary War in 1775. In 1992, there were 3 shots fired beginning a war of a very different kind. The battle surrounds the shooting death of Catherine Haggerty in a small northern Maine town near Jackman. The hotly debated question was whether the police were justified or did they use excessive force. News Center's Mark Finneran takes a look back.
1992 is the year for rallies, marches, and protests. Police are the target of a lot of anger. The controversy begins here in Dennistown at the Haggerty camp, May 15th. Catherine Haggerty is home alone. She's startled by some fishermen outside her camp late at night. She fires some shots to get them off the property. The fishermen call for help. Several police respond and surround her camp. They try talking her out, but are unsuccessful. Reports indicate police wait less than 15 minutes before storming her camp. Once inside, Hagerty raises a rifle and police open fire. Police say they didn't know Hagerty had a rifle.
We have to do our job. What the boys did, they had no choice. They had no choice.
The news of the shooting spreads quickly through Maine and New England. People take sides. Most vocal are those who say the police murdered Hagerty.
I mean, this is the most bizarre thing. I mean, it's worse than the Rodney King thing by far. I mean, nobody can understand it.
Maine's Attorney General says he won't prosecute the officers, but recommends they be fired.
I do not have the authority to revoke their certification. If I did, I would so recommend such a revocation to the Board of Trustees of the Maine Criminal Justice Academy.
Police are now angry at the Attorney General for making this bold statement. Weeks pass, little or no action is taken against the officers. This sparks more controversy.
It's crap, personally. I don't think they ought to get away with any of it.
Why don't you think the charge should be brought against the officers?
Because I think that they acted the only way they knew how.
Attorney General Michael Carpenter has set up a task force to examine the policies and procedures by police when it comes to excessive force. Many want changes in the laws. But the big change in '92 was the way in which people look at police. 1992 was the year to question the authority of the person wearing the badge. I'm Mark Finneran for The Year in Video.
The state police found themselves in turmoil in 1992. A state trooper is arrested in the northern Maine town of Portage in January. William Googans is accused of walking into his ex-wife's home and firing a rifle at her friend. Richard Theriot is hit but not seriously hurt. Googans is charged with attempted murder and released on bail. He's told to stay away from his ex-wife. Googans refuses. In March, police find Googans at his ex-wife's home again. A standoff lasts for hours. Googans eventually surrenders peacefully. He's awaiting trial.
A simple phone call to police in January led to one of the biggest stories of the year. That call was made by a man from Gray who wanted to report a crime he said occurred 20 years ago.
That man also called news center Susan Kimball. She has that story.
The call was made by Mark Sanborn. He told police and he told us that he, his brother Jeffrey, and at least a dozen other men had been sexually abused as children by a pillar of the Gray community, a man who owned a successful family restaurant. His name is Warren Cole.
At the time, he led us to believe that we were in a very special club that was top secret.
In the summer of 1972, Mark Sanborn was 11 years old. His brother Jeff was 10. That's when the boys first met Warren Cole.
He gave us soda and ice cream and for long. He was giving us cigarettes.
Eventually, they say, Cole showed them pornographic movies, gave them beer, got them drunk, and then molested them.
How long did that happen after the first incident?
On a weekly basis.
For a number of months?
4 years.
The Sanborns remember other children being molested during this time, too, but none of them ever told their parents. They figured no one would believe them. They were also intimidated by Cole's close connections to police. He often entertained state police and sheriff's deputies. The children also thought no one would believe them, and they were probably right. This ugly story could have been over in 1981, but law enforcement officials failed to act in a case that was all too obvious. On August 31st, 1981, a 12-year-old boy by the name of Michael Lally was hit by a car and killed in front of Cole Farms restaurant. Lally was staying with Warren Cole that night while his parents, friends of Cole's, were away. That little boy was stone drunk the night he died. Sheriff's deputies knew that, but did nothing about it. This is a copy of a blood test taken the night Michael Lally was killed. His blood alcohol level was .20. But Lally's parents say nobody ever told them their son was drunk. The case was closed 4 days later. Michael Lally's brother Bart says Michael got the booze from Warren Cole, and that the day before Michael died, Cole had taken both boys to camp at Moosehead Lake, where Michael was molested. In January of this year, the Sheriff's Department conducted an internal investigation and found that back in 1981, Sheriff's deputies acted properly in the Lally case. But that is not what the Attorney General found when his investigators stepped in.
It was negligence. I guess you would say that because of the inadequacy of the investigation in total.
And that wasn't done.
But the Cumberland County Sheriff says it's too late to do much about the Lally case. It's too old, and there's not much point in disciplining deputies now.
Just a minute.
In April, Warren Cole pleaded guilty to charges that he molested one boy, while serving 5 years in prison. When he was arrested in January, he told police that he had had numerous sexual episodes with numerous males under the age of 14. But those incidents took place prior to 1986. That's when the statute of limitations ran out on those crimes. This sad chapter for this small community is closed now. The boys who were molested by Warren Cole are now grown men. The wounds were inflicted years ago, but the scars haven't healed. For the Year in Video, I'm Susan Kimball.
Every 11 minutes, a major crime is reported here in Maine. As we look back on 1992, Mainers are reminded that crime knows no boundaries. On a cold Saturday night in March, police in Bangor respond to the Doug Shop and Save on Outer Broadway. A man is stabbed to death. Police say Ponchai Moontree and his friend, 17-year-old Danny Williams, were trying to steal a six-pack of beer when they were confronted by two store clerks.
Yeah, they were kind of nervous because they knew we were following. We were like, 5, 10 feet away from them. They knew they were being followed. They knew they were going to, get in trouble for shoplifting. So that's when the guy turned around and started getting paranoid and freaked out on us. And just started saying, you want to go at it, you want to go at it. Like he wanted to fight, he put his fist up and stuff.
Did you see the knife?
Then he went in his pocket and pulled out the knife. And I was standing there watching the other guy, make sure he wasn't going to do anything. And then as soon as I looked back in the corner of my eye, the other guy was coming after me.
Police say when the two ran towards the door, Michael Scott McDowell met them. McDowell was stabbed to death. He was an off-duty store manager from another Shop and Save. Moontree and Williams are awaiting trial. When firefighters in Range respond to a house fire in January, they make a gruesome discovery. Chickens, ducks, and rabbits are dead. Horses and dogs are weak from hunger and can barely stand. The generosity of Maine people comes through once again. People send food and money to help the animals. The owner, Wendy Radcliffe, will be serving a 10-day jail term and 100 hours of community service. These pictures of a doctor from Bangor are frightening. In early spring, police say two men in ski masks break into the home of Irving Paul, an orthodontist. They tied his hands, taped his mouth, and stuffed him in the trunk of his car. Dr. Paul was found alive in a parking lot a short time later. One man is indicted on kidnapping and robbery charges. After a 2-day manhunt, a man from Maxfield turns himself into police. Police say Larry Butler went to his landlord's house on the night of July 15th and shot them over an argument about rent. Police say alcohol played a factor.
But I didn't intend to hurt him.
What do you intend to do?
Alcohol is an evil rule.
Butler faces 2 counts of aggravated assault. The body of a Lubec banker is discovered in a ditch off the Fenson Road in Bangor in August. Zach Walston is shot in the head. Police are still searching for clues on why Walston was murdered and who would want to kill the banker from Lubec. The Walston family is offering a reward to anyone that has information that could lead to the arrest and conviction of the person responsible for this crime. Fred Marshall is found guilty of murdering his friend last Christmas Eve. At the trial, we learned the murder stems from a dispute over a bottle of coffee brandy. Marshall is currently serving a 28-year sentence at the Maine State Prison in Thomaston. 18-year-old Clayton Byram is sentenced to 7 years in prison. The teenager raped an 8-year-old girl as she was on her way to school. Perhaps the biggest crime story that no one will ever forget is one that happened on the other side of the country.
That's right. The month was May. The city, Los Angeles. People took to the streets of L.A. outraged with the acquittal of 4 police officers in the beating of motorist Rodney King. Buildings were burned, stores looted, and people beaten at random. This may be the most disturbing image from Los Angeles. Truck driver Reginald Denny dragged from his truck and beaten while a television helicopter hovered overhead. The violence spread to other large cities. Atlanta, Seattle, and New York all dealt with mobs that imitated those in Los Angeles. In the end, almost 12,000 people were arrested in Los Angeles after 4 days of violence. In news, we often cover events that mark significant moments in people's lives, moments of great turmoil, anguish, change, and happiness. There was no shortage of these personal moments in 1992.
2 days in July tore families apart. On the 13th, 5 men died in Heartland when this car skidded off the road, slammed into a tree, and burst into flames. The car was traveling at least 70 miles an hour when it left the road. The driver never touched the brakes. An autopsy showed 34-year-old Gary Lennon had a blood alcohol level of .36. Gail St. Pierre's brother was a passenger in the car.
We were just kind of hoping, more or less, that maybe they dropped him off before this happened. I mean, we had hopes for like 45 minutes after we found out who the driver was that, well, maybe they dropped Richie off and picked up with another party and headed out, but I guess not.
The next day, 2 more people were dead when 2 cars collided in the town of Jackson. Jackie Dodge Burnett and her cousin Chrissy Gibbs were killed in what turned out to be a game of chicken.
For the kids that think that chicken is a game, to open their eyes and realize it isn't. It can be a killer. It's no different than taking a gun to someone's head.
Norman Harrison spent much of 1992 fighting for his reputation. The Old Town police officer was accused of child sex abuse. The charges were never proven, but Harrington was taken off the street, and the district attorney refused to prosecute Harrington's cases. Harrington has since been back on the street, but he's still considering a lawsuit against of Old Town.
I think I would like to give you at least that opportunity to go ahead and argue this issue in the courts, but I can't do it from the kitchen floor.
Shirley Adamson wouldn't follow state rules on teaching her kids at home, so she was arrested.
I am a Christian mother. I answer to God for my children. Why is the government intruding into my home, in my Christian home, enforcing their rules and regulations in there?
But with the prospect of losing custody of her kids to ex-husband David, Shirley Adamson relented and enrolled her kids in a private Christian school in Waterville.
I'm disappointed.
University of Maine student Neil Snow became a newsmaker when he took on the federal government over preference. As a cadet Air Force ROTC program, Snow was flying in the face of Defense Department regulations because he's gay, and gays aren't allowed in the military.
Still a desire to serve the Air Force, and I hope that one day too.
Snow was disenrolled from the program, but continued to attend classes to stress his point that policy should be changed.
It rocked the University of Maine. In April of 1992, police uncovered a major sports betting ring on campus.
It involved thousands of dollars in more than 40 students, but it grew from there. News Center's Tim Geyer has this look back.
It began in early April when a student was busted for writing $8,000 worth of bad checks to cover gambling losses. 2 weeks later, university police obtained search warrants for Androscoggin and Knox Halls. They come away with detailed records showing sports betting totaling $3,000 to $10,000 a week. They suspect $100,000 in hands in months.
University police are conducting an investigation into a gambling operation as it consists of bets on NCAA drafts and professional athletics.
Talking $3,000 to $10,000 a week, we're certainly looking at some activity that would be that could be considered to be a felony or Class B offense, which is punishable up to 10 years in jail.
The investigation, police learn more students are involved, at least 50 placing bets. And while betting is not legal in Maine, it does violate NCAA rules for college athletes. 13 members of the baseball team and 6 football players lose their athletic eligibility.
Every time, hey, you're involved in something that occurs that violates your code of conduct, we can't help but say, hey, we just had a black eye of some sort.
Then on May 4th, the case goes before the Penobscot County Grand Jury in Bangor. 4 students are indicted, although charges would eventually be dropped against Chris Altamari. Officials say Altamari was not involved in running the operation.
Edward Rudolph and Sam Yates both pled guilty to felony gambling. Rudolph was fined $5,000 and ordered to spend 5 days in jail. Yates was fined $3,000. Action is still pending against Warren Bennett. I'm Tim Geyer for The Year in Video.
1992 will go down in the history books as the election year to remember.
The overriding theme, it seemed, in everything from presidential politics to races here in Maine was change. Out with the old way of doing things and in with the new. That's what we got this year. Early on the morning of November 4th, Bill Clinton walked out of the governor's mansion in Little Rock, Arkansas, not as governor, but as president-elect. Bill Clinton defeated Republican George Bush to become the 42nd president of the United States.
I ask you to join with us in creating a reunited state, a united country with a new sense of patriotism to face the challenges of this new time.
Clinton is the only candidate ever to win the presidency and not win the New Hampshire primary. He's also only the 4th Democrat in history to win the state of Maine. Ross Perot will also go into the history books. He may not have won all the electoral votes from any one state, but he did have the best popular showing of any third-party candidate in 70 years. Here in Maine, it was close, but in the end, Republican Congresswoman Olympia Snowe defeated Democrat Pat McGowan in the race in the 2nd District. This was the second time in 2 years that McGowan and Snowe had faced off.
I knew that if I could get the message out that my positions and statements were compatible with the interests of the 2nd District, that I agreed with them on the issue of change, that I certainly would be a force of change in Congress, as I've tried to be in the past, that I would be successful in this election.
While Snowe heads back to Washington for an 8th term, there are other elected officials in Maine who will not be returning. The Democrats took a beating. Senate President Charles Prey from Millinocket will not be going back to Augusta. His opponent, Stephen Hall, a Republican from Guilford, defeated Prey easily. In the southern part of the state, Democratic Senate Leader Nancy Clark was defeated by Philip Harriman of Yarmouth. No matter who won or lost, one thing is clear. 1992 is the year of the voter, the year people in Maine and across the country made sure their voices were heard in record numbers. One of the biggest issues facing state lawmakers this year was workers' comp.
It was so divisive, lawmakers could not agree on reforms to the system during the regular legislative session. They had to be called back for a special session in September. Workers' comp is the insurance companies buy to protect their employees against workplace injuries. Companies have long complained that the rates in Maine are so high it's tough for them to do business here. Both Democrats and Republicans agreed that something had to be done to improve the system. Governor McKernan put together a special blue ribbon commission to look at ways to save companies money without making deep cuts in employee benefits. After several long nights in September, lawmakers finally agreed on a new workers' comp system based on the recommendations by the Blue Ribbon Commission. That is not the last you'll hear on this issue. Several proposed changes to the system are expected to come before lawmakers in the new session. Most of us live in Maine because we like the change of seasons and the weather that goes along with each season. But let's face it, the weather is not always ideal.
That's true. News Center weather anchor Pete Cherney takes a look at the biggest meteorological story of 1992.
Maine has its share of severe weather, and anyone who's ever lived here can tell you that. But many people escape to the south, southern states like Florida, when the summer comes to an end. But this year, there was little sanctuary to be found there. Hurricane Andrew slammed into southern Florida on the morning of August 24th. It killed more than 40 people and left many thousands homeless. The cost was staggering. Billions of dollars of damage.
Here, I'll tell you what, Tom, as I work my way...
The hurricane ripped across the state and a day later hit southern Louisiana. People were ready. One person died. Relief began pouring in immediately. President Bush ordered thousands of federal troops in to help provide food and shelter for the hurricane victims.
Good afternoon, American Red Cross.
Here in Maine, people dug deep into their pockets. The Red Cross was inundated with calls from people who wanted help. Volunteer relief workers from Maine went to Florida to help with the cleanup. Local police and sheriff's departments extended the long arm of the law to help with relief efforts. In October, the last of the troops pulled out of southern Florida. For the year in review, I'm Pete Cherney.
The people in the small northern Maine town of Allagash are no strangers to what old Mother Nature can dish out. It was only a year ago when floods wiped out most of the town. In late May of this year, their courage and perseverance were called upon yet again to fight a fire that swept through more than 1,000 acres of forest land. Residents were evacuated and more than 200 firefighters battled the blaze through the night. Heavy hardware was brought in. Tank trucks, bulldozers, and helicopters were used in the fight. When morning came, the dam could be seen from the air. But the battle continued on the ground. It took almost 3 days to put the flames out. Those men and women who fight fires have amazing courage. One such firefighter is Irving Gray.
His story became news on March 16th of this year. That was the day Irving Gray, a volunteer firefighter, responded to a call in neighboring Etna.
The house was so much involved, it was doubtful if we could save it. Davis, another firefighter from town, said that he dropped, and he saw the chimney stack fall, and he hollered. And being with the other fighter who was hurt, but he heard something, but he don't recall who it was. When they found me, I was laying down and the chimney was on top of me.
When Irving Gray got to Joseph's Hospital in Bangor, he didn't think he was going to make it. The nerves from his right arm were torn from his spine. His right leg was broken in 2 places. So was his left hand and jaw. He broke his nose, his right collarbone, and his right lung collapsed under the pressure of 800 pounds of bricks and mortar. This is Irving Gray today. We caught up with him in his home in Stetson. He is very much alive and talks about what happened that day last March.
When they finally did roll me over, they said that the whole face shield on the SCBA was full of blood.
7 weeks after the accident, Irving Gray finally woke up. 5 weeks after that, he was home. He surprised not only his family, but also his doctors. He cannot use his right arm yet, but he says he's not giving up. He's come this far. Just look at it. The wheelchair is now folded up and in the corner. He says he doesn't need it anymore.
I'm real thankful I'm still alive and can get around as well as I am. And I'm hoping that I can get back to work and get more involved, like I said, with the fire department and the ambulance service from Carmel.
June marked an end and a beginning for the Bangor-based Partners in Health. After more than a year of planning, the group of Maine health professionals delivered 31 tons of new and used medical equipment to stock a new hospital in Puerto Cabezas, Nicaragua. With the help of hundreds of Maine volunteers, healthcare organizations, and the U.S. military, the people on the Atlantic coast of Nicaragua will be able to say goodbye to shockingly outdated technology and conditions. News Center brought you the whole story of recycling at its best. And the partners say this is just the beginning of a long-term partnership between the two communities. They plan to return to train workers at the new hospital in early 1993. That was only one of many health stories that dominated our news this year.
For a look at some of the others, here's Health Beat reporter Jill McDonald.
1992 marks the 19th anniversary of Roe versus Wade, with doubts about whether the controversial Supreme Court decision legalizing abortion would see its 20th anniversary. In June, the Supreme Court cleared the way for states to impose far-reaching restrictions on abortion rights. Here in Maine, pro- and anti-choice advocates were becoming more vocal, gearing up for a state-level fight on a long unused waiting period law and an attempt to make Roe versus Wade into state law.
The strength of Maine and Maine people is that we are independent. We like to make decisions for ourselves. We don't like a lot of groups restricting our individual rights.
And after many delays, a federal rule went into effect that says staff at federally funded health clinics can no longer talk about abortion in pregnancy counseling. Maine family planning clinics are getting around the rule by using federal funds only for expenses not related to pregnancy counseling. Early spring saw the Food and Drug Administration ban the use of silicone breast implants after reports of serious complications with their use. Dow Corning announced its intention to stop manufacturing the implants for good, and Maine women waited for reconstructive surgery after breast cancer while the FDA deliberated. Now, silicone implants can be used for breast cancer reconstruction, but not for augmentation except in specific research centers. The cost of an implant has tripled. The face of health care in eastern Maine changed substantially in 1992 with the historic opening of Acadia Hospital, the first new community hospital to open since the 1960s. When it's up to full capacity, Acadia will offer 100 beds and outpatient services for psychiatric and substance abuse patients. And Eastern Maine Medical Center broke roof high atop its Grant building.
In December 1993, a new inpatient children's center up here will replace the woefully overcrowded pediatric unit at the hospital. When it comes to faces and health care, they're going to be a lot harder to see. New federal rules require any person who might be exposed to blood or body fluids on the job to be ready to glove, gown, and goggle. That includes ambulance crews, police, and firefighters.
Living in Maine and the amount of cases that are there and the compassion people showed there, I wasn't ready for this.
When former Bangor schoolgirl Autumn Aquino and her family moved to Florida, hoping the warm climate would make the little girl with AIDS feel better, they got a chilly reception. While Autumn's health appeared to improve, her mother's own AIDS progressed. Still, the family vowed to stick it out in the new community. I'm Health Beat reporter Jill McDonald for the Year in Video.
1992 was also a year of milestones in local sports. The year featured Olympic medal winners, a hockey strike, and a Hobie winner.
It was also a banner year for Maine baseball players in the big leagues and professional baseball in the state. And perhaps the biggest story of 1992 was when Larry Legend called it quits. News Center's Dale Duff looks back at the big sports stories of 1992.
Bird has the ball in three-point land.
I love to play basketball. I've always enjoyed practicing. I've always enjoyed trying to make myself better. It's something that I'm giving up. It's something I have to give up.
Unforgettable in every way.
1992 will go down as the year sports lost a couple of superstars. Larry Bird and his aching back retired. Magic Johnson smiling here after winning Olympic gold and announcing his comeback to the NBA. He went back into retirement in November. The Summer Games took center stage for 2 weeks in '92, and Maine was part of it all. Bangor sailor Kevin Mahaney won silver. Fairfield's Michael Poulin brought back bronze in dressage. And Maine even had a slice of the Winter Olympic story. Julie Parisienne just missed winning a medal in skiing, and University of Maine goalie Mike Dunham was part of U.S. hockey. Speaking of hockey, the Maine Black Bears proved again to be one of the top teams in the nation, and Scott Pellerin captured college hockey's highest individual award, the Hobie Baker Trophy. What a year in baseball. The Toronto Blue Jays, world champions. Robin Yount, 3,000 hits. And George Brett, 3,000 hits. And just when you thought a superstar like Jose Canseco would never be traded, the A's dealt him to Texas. Maine's Billy Swift joined the San Francisco Giants and won the National League ERA title. And Maine's Mike Bordick won a starting job in Oakland and batted .300. And the Red Sox, well, they finished in last place. The city of Portland got a new minor league baseball team, and Bangor got a new $1 million stadium, courtesy Stephen King. 1992 was a turbulent year in boxing. Heavyweight champ Mike Tyson convicted of rape and off to prison. Maine boxer Joey Gamache had a tiger by the tail in Tony Lopez, but after fight night, Gamache had no title and a big black eye. State champions, Chip Carson rolled to a candlepin bowling title. Martha White won another golf title. And Rick Ambrose felt right at home winning a state title at Penabe.
That offer was rejected by a vote of 560 to 4.
In the NHL, the players went on strike briefly, and Wayne Gretzky went out with a bad back and his return uncertain. And in 1992, the old proved to be A-OK with Maine sports fans. The Gray Sox packed them in at Mahaney Diamond. And the King and his court proved entertaining as always. Although the duffer getting a base hit may show some signs that the King is not quite so mighty.
And that marks the end of the Year in Video for 1992. We hope you've enjoyed this recap of the year's biggest stories.
And don't forget, immediately following this program, News Center presents its special on the transatlantic balloon race, so stay tuned.
And we'll see you in 1993.